Gather, children of the wind, and let your hearts settle like dust after the evening rain. We begin not at the beginning, but at the meeting of two rivers, one born of mountain snow, the other of humble spring. This is the tale of the house that forgot it was built by human hands, and the hands that remembered how to rebuild it. Let us walk to the valley where the road takes a long breath, and witness the first fateful crack in a perfect, lacquered world. The house of many windows did not simply stand, it presided. Its walls, washed in the red ochre of pride, glowed like a permanent sunset. From its broad verandas, the valley lay obedient below, a tapestry of green and brown. Here, the heir Kojo-Ade learned to walk with a carved staff of ebony, its weight meant to teach his shoulders the burden of legacy. His father, Kofi, would point with that staff to the ledger books, their pages crisp as dried leaves. "A man is the sum of his accounts," Kofi would say, his voice the sound of coins settling. "Debts and assets, allies and servants. Remember, the ruin of a nation begins in the homes of its people. Our home must be a fortress of order." Kojo-Ade's world was measured, predictable, a map drawn in ink and gold dust. Yet, from those same verandas, his eyes were drawn not to the neat rows of crops, but to the lively, murmuring cluster of huts cupped against the earth below the terrace. Smoke from 100 humble hearts braided into the sky, carrying the scent of wood smoke and baking bread. It was there his ancestors would whisper in dreams he could not yet decipher, that the true heart of the valley beat. A restless feeling would stir in him, as if the staff in his hand was the wrong kind of weight. The wisdom of his lineage felt like a robe too stiffly woven, chafing against a spirit that yearned to feel the soft, giving texture of the earth itself. Beneath the terrace's long shadow, the world was not measured in ledgers, but in the span of a hand, the depth of a bowl. In a hut fragrant with wet clay and herbs, Seema the potter's wife shaped the valley's necessities. Her daughter, Lela, was a shadow at her side, her small fingers learning the language of the wheel before she knew the alphabet of men. "Clay speaks," Seema would murmur, her hands a steady dance. "It tells you if it is too proud, too dry, too weak. You must listen with your palms. Patience can cook a stone until it is soft." Lela learned this virtue not as a lesson, but as a rhythm in her blood. She learned to feel the potential in a lump of earth, the hidden vessel waiting to be coaxed into being. Their home was a testament to quiet resilience. Gourds hung from rafters, holding secrets of seeds and medicine. The floor, packed earth polished smooth by generations of bare feet, was cool and welcoming. Here, the ancestors were not distant names in a ledger, but a presence felt in the snap of the fire, in the protective symbols etched onto the drying pots. Lela's world was one of tangible creation, where value was not counted but felt, in the weight of a water jug that would not spill, in the warmth of a bowl that would feed a hungry child. Her inheritance was not gold, but knowledge, how to mend, how to nurture, how to make something whole from broken pieces. The weekly market was the valley's pulsing heart, where the terrace's shadow met the sun-drenched stalls in a chaotic, colorful truce. Kojo-Ade's duty was a solemn procession, to inspect, to be seen, to project the unshakable stability of the house. He moved between stalls of dyed cloth and brassware, his attendant noting prices, his expression one of detached appraisal. The air was thick with the smells of smoked fish, spices, and sweat, a vibrant hum that contrasted with the silent order of his home. A proverb echoed in his mind, one his tutor drilled into him. He who counts the stars has no time for the fireflies. His gaze was meant for the horizon of trade, not the glittering, fleeting moments at his feet. But on this day, the wind, that great trickster, decided to dance. A mischievous gust, smelling of distant rain, snaked through the market. It caught the corner of a stack of finely woven Kent cloth from the house's own stall, sending a ripple of expensive color tumbling. A merchant lunged, his cry sharp with panic. In the commotion, a heavy, glazed bowl, a product of the house's pottery, toppled from its perch and struck the hard ground with a sound like a gasp. It did not just crack, it shattered, its pieces skittering like terrified beetles across the dust. The merchant's face paled, his mind already calculating the loss. Amidst a fluster of grown men worrying over broken clay, a sound arose, clear, bright, and utterly unconcerned with ledger lines. It was laughter. Kojo-Ade turned. Nearby, Lela sat by her mother's modest stall, a cracked cooking pot cradled in her lap, a paste of resin and ash beside her. She was not laughing at the misfortune, but at the spectacle, the puffed-out chests, the dramatic sighs over something that could, with patience and skill, be made whole again. Her laughter was the sound of a bubbling spring, unexpected and refreshing. It did not judge, it simply found the absurdity in a world that had forgotten that most broken things can be mended. That laugh slipped through the armor of Kojo-Ade's training and found the spaces in his chest. He stood, transfixed, looking from the irredeemable shards of the house's perfect bowl to the girl mending an imperfect one with calm certainty. Here was a different kind of knowledge. His feet, of their own accord, carried him closer. "You find amusement in breakage?" he asked, his voice sounding strangely formal to his own ears. Lela looked up, her eyes holding the warm, deep brown of fertile earth. "I find amusement in fear," she said simply. A bowl breaks. Clay returns to earth. From earth, we make another. Why should such a circle frighten men who command the wind and the rain? In her question, Kojo-Ade felt the first tremor in the foundation of everything he knew. Thus began a series of stolen conversations, meetings in the borderlands between their worlds. Kojo-Ade would linger after his inspections, drawn to the potter's stall under the pretext of examining craftsmanship. He asked questions about firing temperatures and clay sources, but his real education was in Lela's perspective. She showed him how to see the valley not as a managed estate, but as a living body, the river's mood, the soil's health, the gossip of birds that warned of weather shifts. "My grandmother said the land speaks in 1,000 tongues," Lela shared one day, her hands never still. "To those in high houses, it whispers. To those who touch it, it sings." Kojo-Ade, in turn, shared the silent pressures of his world. He spoke not of wealth, but of weight, the expectation to be a flawless pillar, to never show doubt. He confessed he sometimes dreamed of being a bird, weightless and accountable to no ledger. Lela listened, her head tilted. "A bird still must eat," she said. "It must know which branches are strong, which winds are kind. Its freedom is not in having no duties, but in knowing its own nature. Perhaps you are not a pillar, Kojo-Ade. Perhaps you are a bridge." The metaphor startled him. A pillar stands alone, supporting weight from above. A bridge connects, allows flow, depends on both sides. It was a terrifying, exhilarating thought. The ancestors, they say, speak through the quiet voice of conscience and the sharp lessons of consequence. For Kojo-Ade, their guidance came in a dream. He found himself standing in the great hall of the house, but the floor was not wood. It was the still surface of a vast, dark pool. His family stood on a beautiful lacquered boat, calling him to join them. But when he looked down into the water, he saw faces, the servants, the potters, the farmers, looking up from beneath the surface, their hands pressed against the underside, holding the boat afloat. A voice deep as a drum and old as the hills echoed. "A tree that forgets its roots is easily toppled by the storm." He woke with a start, his heart pounding, the truth of the dream sitting heavy on his spirit. He dared to mention the dream's feeling, not its specifics, to his father over morning cocoa. Kofi scoffed, stirring his drink with a silver spoon. "Dreams are the mind's restless dust. Pay them no heed. Your duty is to the living house, not to phantoms in water. Remember, the child who seeks to bathe in every stream will catch a chill that kills him." The proverb was a warning against exactly the kind of curiosity Kojo-Ade was nurturing. The lesson of humility, the understanding that his position was sustained by countless unseen hands, was one his lineage had deliberately unlearned. The dream was a root memory, pushing through the paved-over ground of his inheritance. Meanwhile, in the hut below, Seema watched her daughter with a mother's keen, worried eye. She saw the new light in Lela's gaze, the unconscious smile that appeared when she spoke of the heir's odd questions. One evening, as they ground nutmeg by firelight, Seema spoke softly. "Daughter, The heart is a brave hunter, but it does not always know the terrain. You speak of the boy from the many-windowed house. His world is held together by rules as tight as drumskin. She paused, her hand stilling. There is a tradition, Lela, as old as these hills. When a man of a high house looks too long at a girl of the earth, his family does not see a romance. They see a theft of status, of purity, of order. Lela protested, "He is not like them, Mama. He listens." Seema's smile was sad. He may listen today, but tomorrow his father will speak of alliances, of a bride from the house of the leopard, whose dowry includes a bridge over the river Amma. What will his listening be worth then? She took Lela's hand, her palms rough and strong. "I do not speak to break your spirit, but to arm it. Love is a beautiful flower, but it does not fill the granary. Know the difference between a feeling and a future." Her words were not a command, but a shield offered, forged from the hard-won wisdom of survival. The cultural fabric of the valley was displayed in its festivals, and the festival of first fruits was the most vibrant. It was a day when traditionally the terrace and the hut met in celebration. The house would provide music and the central feast, and the people would bring their finest harvests in tribute. Kojo-Ade, clad in resplendent Kent, was to stand beside his father and accept the blessings of the people. As the procession of offerings began, baskets of yam, jars of palm oil, beautifully woven textiles. He performed his role with a stiff smile. He saw the careful calculation in his father's eyes, assessing the worth of each tribute, converting gratitude into future leverage. His eyes searched the crowd and found Lela. She was not in the procession. She stood with the other artisans, holding not an offering for the house, but a small, exquisite pot she had made. It was not for tribute, it was for the community altar, an offering to the ancestors for a good season. Her act was personal, spiritual, disconnected from the economy of obligation playing out before him. In that moment, he saw the two truths of his valley, one of transaction and display, and one of direct, heartfelt connection to something greater. The virtue of gratitude, he realized, was being perverted on the veranda into a ritual of debt, while in the dust it remained a pure, unbartered communion. Driven by the stirrings in his heart and the haunting dream, Kojo-Ade began a quiet rebellion of observation. He started walking the estate not as its master, but as a stranger. He saw old man Akin, who tended the house's orchards, rubbing balm on knuckles swollen from a lifetime of pruning. He heard the soft singing of the washerwomen by the river, songs that held stories of love and loss he'd never heard in the great hall. He noticed how the children of the huts shared a single ripe mango with effortless joy, a lesson in community his solitary tutors had never imparted. One afternoon, he found Lela at the communal well, teaching a younger child how to balance a water pot on her head. Her instruction was gentle, firm, and full of laughter. "Your neck is not a post, it is a reed," she demonstrated. "It must sway with the rhythm of your walk. Let the pot become part of your dance." Kojo-Ade watched, entranced by the practical poetry of it. This was leadership, not commanding, but empowering, not taking, but sharing skill. It stood in stark contrast to his father's council meetings, where voices were raised to dominate, not to teach. He was collecting pieces of a different world, and each one fit together with a sense of rightness that his own world lacked. The first real test came from Kojo-Ade's own household. Auntie Ya, his father's sharp-eyed sister, was the keeper of social order. She summoned him to her sitting room, a space dense with the scent of preserved roses and disapproval. "Nephew," she began, her voice like silk over stone, "my ears are filled with buzzing flies. They speak of you and the potter's child." She did not wait for denial. There is a saying, "Do not allow the goat to tend the yam crop." It is not about the goat's intent, but its nature. Your nature is to lead, to preserve. Hers is to serve. Mixing these natures spoils both. Her warning was woven with tradition. When your great-grandfather built this house, he performed the Ntam ceremony. He pledged that the blood of the founders would always guide its doors, pure and strong. These are not just words, Kojo-Ade. They are a covenant with the ancestors who give us our place in the world. To break it is to invite their displeasure, to weaken the very walls around us. She framed her opposition not as cruelty, but as sacred duty, a defense of cosmic order. It was a heavier argument than simple snobbery. It tied his personal desire to spiritual betrayal and familial collapse. Lela, too, felt the walls of tradition closing in. The other girls at the well grew quieter when she approached. Their mothers, who once traded friendly gossip with Seema, now offered tight, wordless smiles. The market women, who were the valley's news bearers, sang a new, cautionary song as they pounded fufu. The river may admire the stone, but can it carry it to the sea? The stone may love the river, but can it ever learn to flow? The message was clear. Some divides were not meant to be crossed by love, only by duty or disaster. Her own mother did not forbid, but her worry took on a physical form. Seema began working later into the night, her wheels spinning faster, producing more pots than they could sell. "We must save little bird," was all she would say, her face etched in firelight. She was building a dowry of her own, a pile of clay and sweat, in case the world turned cold and Lela needed something of her own to stand on. Lela understood then that her love was no longer just a feeling between two people. It had become an economic variable, a social risk, a burden on the one person she loved most. The virtue of filial piety wrestled with the yearning of her own heart. Their meetings became more secret, more precious. They found a hidden alcove near the old baobab tree, its roots like giant fingers gripping the earth. Here, they exchanged not just words, but skills. Kojo-Ade brought a wax tablet and stylus, teaching Lela the symbols of commerce and law. "This is how they bound my great-uncle to a bad debt," he explained, showing her a tricky clause. Lela's quick mind absorbed it, and she saw the ledgers not as records of truth, but as weapons. "So the story of a man's life can be changed by the curl of a symbol?" she asked, a new hardness in her eyes. In return, she gave him a lump of clay. "Your hands know how to hold a pen, a staff. Let them learn to listen." His first attempts were laughable, lopsided, collapsing forms. He grew frustrated, his shoulders tense. "Breathe," Lela instructed, her hands gently covering his. "The clay feels your anger. You cannot command it. You must ask it. A gentle hand can lead the mightiest elephant." Under her guidance, he felt the material respond. He created a small, crude, but intact bowl. The pride he felt was different from any academic praise. It was the pride of creation, of partnership with the earth. He was learning humility in the most tangible way. The dry season arrived, harsher than any in living memory. The sun became a relentless, brass eye in a bleak sky. The river Amma shrank to a timid trickle. In the house of many windows, the first response was not concern, but calculation. Kofi called his council. "The people will be hungry," he stated. "Hungry people are cheap laborers. We will buy their future yields now at a low price to see us through." It was a strategy of profit from despair. Kojo-Ade, now permitted to sit in on minor councils, felt a chill. "Father, should we not open the secondary granaries? The Ancestors' Reserve." Kofi's look was one of pure disdain. The Ancestors' Reserve is for the family's survival, not for the laziness of tenants who did not store enough. When the mouse laughs at the cat, there is a hole nearby. Their hole is their own poor planning. We will not be their hole. The proverb was twisted into a justification for callousness. Kojo-Ade saw the virtue of stewardship, caring for those in your charge, being replaced by the cold arithmetic of exploitation. The house was choosing to be a predator in the drought, not a protector. The dream of the people holding up the boat flashed before his eyes, and he saw their hands beginning to tremble. Down in the huts, the drought was not a ledger entry. It was a tightening fist. Gardens withered. The communal well yielded only mud. Seema and Lela's store of grains dwindled. Yet, here, the response was different. Neighbors pooled the last of their millet. The few who had access to a hidden spring shared its bitter water without being asked. Old Man Akin, though his own fruit was stunted, brought what he could to families with young children. "We are branches of the same tree," he croaked. "When the wind burns, we shade each other or we all break." Lela brought this reality to Kojo-Ade in their hidden spot. Her face was thinner, her eyes larger. "Your father's men came today," she said, her voice flat. "They demanded the full season's rent. When my mother showed them our empty baskets, they said the debt would be added to next season's burden, with interest." She looked at him, not with accusation, but with a devastating clarity. "You study justice in your books. What is the word for this?" He had no answer. The justice of the house was legal, contractual. The justice of the huts was based on survival, on shared humanity. He saw, for the first time, how the law could be a weapon to bludgeon the very people it should shield. The crisis forced a choice upon Kojo-Ade that was no longer philosophical. He stood at the crossroads of his life. One path led back to the veranda, to a future of managed scarcity and enforced distance, to a marriage of alliance that would seal his complicity. The other path led down the terrace steps into the dusty, hungry, but fiercely communal world below. It meant surrendering everything he knew for a truth he had only glimpsed. That night, during the ceremony of the new moon where the family made offerings to their lineage ancestors, Kojo-Ade felt a profound disconnect. As the libation was poured, he did not feel the presence of proud, wealthy forebears. Instead, he thought of the unnamed ancestors, the builders, the diggers, the first potters, whose sweat was the true mortar of the house. A new courage, cold and sharp, settled in his bones. It was not the courage of a warrior, but the courage of a sapling breaking through stone, slow, deliberate, and rooted in a deep, undeniable need for the sun. He knew what he had to do, and the terror of it was eclipsed only by the greater terror of a life lived in a gilded lie. The drumbeat quickens, little ones. The air has seen the crack in his world, and a choice made in the heart's quiet chamber is about to echo through the valley like thunder. Will he dare to step off the veranda? The story is hungry for his answer. Listen on